if you think of yourself as a professional communicator, you're going to have more of those value moments and better relationships. If you remember that you're in the relationship business first and the bookkeeping business second, you're going to have more of those value moments.
You're listening to The Successful Bookkeeper with your host, Michael Palmer. Listen each week as inspiring guests share their secrets of success to help you increase your confidence, work smarter, and build a business you love. This episode of The Successful Bookkeeper is brought to you by PureBookkeeping.com, the proven system to grow your bookkeeping business.
Welcome back to the Successful Bookkeeper Podcast. I am your host, Michael Palmer, and today's show is going to be a fantastic one. Our guest is an author and speaker who helps businesses become more creative and successful. Michael Gelb, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. Great to be with you.
It's great to have you, and I'm excited about this episode in terms of your experience and background in helping businesses become more creative and successful. I mean, this is the Successful Bookkeeper Podcast, so it sounds like a perfect fit. But before we get into all of that, Michael, please tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey leading up to what you do today.
Wow, we could spend the whole time because it's been a long time I've been doing this. It's amazing how it happens like that.
Well, I love a good story, so.
Well, the truth is, when I started, I was utterly clueless about business. I was totally idealistic. I wanted to change the world by teaching people how to think more creatively and communicate more effectively. Those always seemed to me to be the most important things that anyone could learn. And at first, I really thought that maybe I could teach those things to the government.
Oh, dear.
I'm not kidding. I actually moved to Washington, D.C. in 1982 with the idealistic notion of teaching politicians and people involved in government and administration how to think more creatively and communicate more effectively. But I was shocked to discover that they were not interested at all in thinking. They were interested in the communication side, but only to have more power and influence without necessarily thinking about the consequences. So I was not well received by government and politicians. However, fortunately, businesses were really interested in what I was teaching, and I started to get engaged by many people who I think, today they're called high potentials, fast track type folks. And they engaged me and asked me to train them in creative thinking and in effective communication. And something really cool happened. A number of them rose up to become CEOs of major companies. So all of a sudden, I was functioning as a consultant and an executive coach to senior business leaders. And I was a good student as I was teaching. So I started to learn about business. One of my first clients was the learning resources group of the DuPont company. And they put me on retainer. And I got to tell you, I was so naive, I didn't realize that there was such a thing. And when I discovered that people would just pay me and commit to paying me for, in that case, a couple of years, to go up to Wilmington, Delaware, and teach them a seminar on creative thinking and effective communication, every month. I just couldn't. It was just the coolest thing ever. I would love to do this, and I was making regular money. But at the end of 2 years, I had taught them everything I knew, and I thought, this is so sweet. I want to keep this going. So I had to think creatively, and I made up more new stuff. And so I've always, I've kept a step ahead of my clients by writing a new book and developing seminars and consulting around the book. And now that's led to 17 books and a lot of coaching and consulting and a lot of very successful business clients over the years. And in the process, I've learned a thing or two.
Wow. What a great story. And congratulations on you having a dream and having a passion and a conviction for making the world a better place and going after it. And here you are. I'm sure a lot of blood, sweat, and tears along the way to live your passion and to be paid well, likely paid well, and then be able to make a real big difference for a lot of different people in business. Fantastic to hear the story.
Well, thank you. And the great thing is, so the new book, Mastering the Art of Public Speaking, is everything I've learned about how to be persuasive, how to transform the fears and jitters that people have about public speaking. It is the number one fear that people have, but I also consider it to be the number one skill that people can develop to strengthen their success in business and really to a large extent in life. Because whatever it is you want to do, whatever your dream is, you have to enroll other people to support you. And whether that's sales, whether that's an interview, whether that's speaking to your local PTA, whatever it happens to be, it's a skill that is critically important. And it's one that when you understand the fundamentals of it, you can continue to improve for the rest of your life. So fortunately, I figured that out early on. And I started out, I was doing mostly seminars, but as I wrote more books, I kept getting invited to give keynote speeches. And now I'm doing a lot of them, as you might imagine, online, on Zoom, and so on and so forth. But all the principles are just the same. And in terms of what you mentioned about how blessed I am to be able to pursue my dream and get paid for it, I have been a professional speaker now for decades. And what that means is that for years, I've traveled around the world. Now I do it virtually, but I'll be back to doing it live soon. And people listen to what I say. They introduce me. They are quiet. They pay attention. They applaud. A lot of times they give me a standing ovation. And then they give me a huge check. Now, I got to tell you, I grew up in a Jewish Italian family where everybody was talking all at once. Nobody ever listened to anybody else unless you were really forceful and persuasive. So I still can't believe my luck, and just what I do for a living is I talk, they listen, they give me money.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Well, I can just tell by listening to you now, you've got a very nice cadence, and you seem like a great person. And I can really see how an audience would be captivated by what you're saying. And I would imagine that that's because you are a master, because you've been doing it, practicing, living it all these years. And I think often people look at speakers and say, oh, they came out of the womb like that. And I'll never be able to be as good as Michael is up on stage, and maybe address that, because many of our listeners, they're not typically public speakers. They're not likely even on a trajectory to even want to do public speaking, but yet if they were to start and do some training and be aware of what's going on with their speaking and how they're communicating, it would show up as a positive result in business relationships with clients, prospective clients, and as well their family and friends.
Very important question. Thank you. So when I started out, I had lots of friends who were very thoughtful, quite introverted, in many cases scholarly. And I saw that as I got to know a lot of these folks, they had a lot to say, but they didn't know how to say it. And I did seem to have this feeling for taking complex ideas, and as Einstein said, things should be made as simple as possible, not simpler. So I had this notion of how do you communicate the optimal simplicity of a concept, even a very complex concept, to make it as accessible as it could be to as many people as possible. And I started to focus on how could I help a lot of these thoughtful, more introverted folks be more successful in communicating, in getting across the messages that they might have spent years researching or studying, understanding. And I realized that there's a simple, really powerful, and actually effortless secret, which I would like to unveil to everyone listening right now, because it's so simple, but it's so powerful. So if I ask everyone listening, what is your job title? And hopefully your job title is successful bookkeeper. Right? But you run your own business. You're a business owner, and you're successful, and obviously you're listening because you want to maintain your success and become even more successful. So when somebody asks you what you do from now on, you will say, well, I run a bookkeeping business and so on. And you don't have to say this next part out loud, but it's just an internal shift that can change your effectiveness for the rest of your career. And that is to begin right from this moment to think of yourself as a professional communicator and a professional speaker. And the reason is simply this, that most people don't think of themselves as professional communicators and professional speakers. They focus on what it is they do: bookkeeper, accountant, lawyer, physician. But your ability to communicate, your ability to present, is as important as your technical skill in whatever your discipline happens to be. But since public speaking in particular is the number one fear of the public around the world, a book of lists ranks public speaking number one fear. Death is 7th on the list. Now, if we put it to you that way, most people say, okay, I'll give the eulogy. I'll give the speech rather than being buried in the casket.
That's right.
But there's this tension between the fact that this is the number one fear that people have, and it's the number one skill you can develop to strengthen your long-term career success. So how do you turn that around? You turn around by embracing the idea that you're a professional communicator, a professional speaker. See, when the average person is invited to give a presentation, their first thought is, uh-oh, and they go into stress. Professional speakers go, oh, great, what a fantastic opportunity for me to get my message across. And the attitude you take from the first moment you think about presenting makes all the difference. Because see, I, as a professional speaker, every time I'm at a party or reading a book or watching something on television or magazine or conversation, there's a part of my mind that is taking notes on how I can use, if I hear a good joke, I'm going to use it in my next talk. If I hear a relevant story, I am going to turn that into a story that illuminates a key point I want to make in my next presentation, so that I'm always improving. I'm always getting better, because it's just part of my identity to be a speaker, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So the key is, as soon as possible in your life, just change your self-concept and say, okay, I'm committed to this process of improving this, of getting better. Doesn't mean I have to be perfect. Doesn't mean I have to suddenly be able to get on stage and demonstrate charisma and perfect body language and timing and all that stuff. No, it just means that now I'm in the game. Now I'm engaged in this process of improving this critical skill. And then that embrace of presentation communication becomes a positive self-fulfilling prophecy. So the biggest thing is, right from the beginning, is to shift your sense of your relationship to communication and presentation.
I love that. And I think I hear the opportunity in that you're shifting it away from, like, people would think, oh, I'm mastering communication, I'm mastering public speaking. They would think, oh, I'm going to be up, I have to go up in front of an audience and, I have to get all ready for that. And like you said, not make a mistake and all the things that would lead to this being the number one fear. Whereas the opportunity here is to be a master at communicating what it is that you do in your daily life, and being able to have people understand what it is that you do, how it's important to them, how you're important, how you make people feel important around what they do and what they're up to, which will lead to incredible opportunities for relationship building, for moving things along in life more quickly. And it's just a context shift for people, that they could embrace that and not be fearful of that, because there's no stage to stand on. The stage is the one that you put your feet on the floor every day. That's the stage we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
And so I really like that. And I think this knowing our audience, not being typically public speakers, maybe perhaps more of them being ambiverts or introverted, where they prefer to be with themselves and working on the books, doing the work and the technical aspect of the job. This is something that every one of our listener right now can embrace.
Well, thank you so much. That's very well stated. And this is another shift of mindset, of concept about what you're doing, that's so important for people to make, because you think you're in the bookkeeping business, but that's actually not really your business. You are in the relationship business, and your relationships are what allow you to get to do the successful bookkeeping. No relationships, no business.
Bang on.
Right?
Absolutely right. And I forget who it was, or a book or so. I was listening to something recently where it was the conversation of the railroad companies. They thought they were in the railroad business. They didn't realize they were in the transportation business, and other industries took over, and they lost fortunes because they didn't think correctly about what business they're in. And I think it's important for us to really highlight that. And that's another great context shift. The relationship business.
Right. The relationship. And I mentioned DuPont. So I worked with DuPont for many years. I trained all of their chemical engineers in creative thinking. And at a certain point, I was engaged by the scientists who are part of it still exists. It's called the DuPont Fellows Program. And it's the scientists within DuPont who have generated the most patents. So when you generate a certain number of patents, you get invited to the Fellows Program, and you get really the best facilities. You control your own time. You have a bigger budget. And what you're asked to do is get more patents. So I was working with these brilliant scientists on how they could be even more creative, but they had another issue. And the issue was that their presentation and communication skills needed some work. So I was invited to come in and do a presentation seminar for these top level scientists. So I put them on video, which we still do. It's just great to see yourself presenting, because the camera does not lie. Anyway, these brilliant scientists, one after the other, they all got up there and they gave presentations, something to the effect of, well, we looked at the molecule under these conditions, and we were surprised at the way the molecule functioned. And when we changed the reagent, the molecule shifted, but it was different than what we blah, blah, blah. So I just played back the video to the scientists, and I said, I want you to put yourself into the position of your audience for this presentation, because their audience was the marketing and sales team. not other scientists. And as they watched themselves from the perspective of the marketing and sales team, you could see it dawning on them that the message was not going to get through. And that the head scientist stood up and said a classic line. He said, "Oh my God, we are guilty of molecule fondling." Well, what's the bookkeeping equivalent of molecule fondling? It's professionals who pride themselves on their technical expertise and proficiency tend naturally to fall in love with their subject and the details of their subject. And look, you want your bookkeeper to be that passionate, that dedicated, that devoted, that detailed in their pursuit of technical excellence. However, I don't necessarily need to know all the details. If you're my bookkeeper, you just got to let me know that everything balances out and I'm going to be okay. It's our relationship. It's the confidence. It's the trust. It's the empathy for the audience and recognize. Here's another incredibly simple but powerful truth. We can only measure the success of our communication by the result we achieve with the audience. So we can only measure the success of our communication by the result we achieve with the audience. So how do you communicate in such a way that what the person thinks is the person you're communicating to, that what they get is just what you intended for them to get? And this is not just obviously with your clients. You may feel like you love your spouse or your child or whatever, but people are probably familiar with the Love Languages book. People have different ways of feeling love, different ways of being appreciated. Some people like to get a gift. Some people like verbal acknowledgement. Some people want it in writing. My wife likes them all, so I make sure I deliver in all modalities, and the result is we have a very happy marriage.
If we think of a value moment that a bookkeeper would have with their clients, it would be, a review, a check-in, like the discussion of their financial situation. And I can really see like the molecule fondling would be often what would be happening is that it would be a conversation around the technical, what happened versus what does that all mean and why is it important? And I think if there was an outcome goal for them to leverage that value moment and make that an extremely valuable moment for both themselves and their client, it would be to look at, well, what's the outcome typically, which is, I imagine, a lot of glassy eyes, maybe, saying, come on, move on, depending on the business owner. Whereas shifting that to them leaning in, them saying, interesting, getting involved in the conversation and the content that's being presented. And that is, I think, what I can hear in this. If we think about the interactions, bookkeeper doing a lot of work, making things happen, business owner not really knowing exactly what might be happening, what needs to happen, why it's important and all that good stuff because they're focused on other things. And so if they don't know, and then they don't want to hear about it, but they want to have trust and confidence and conviction around what the bookkeeper is doing. And so if you have one great value moment where you've presented information that's tantalizing, delicious to the owner, I mean, that equals like 50 check-in calls, right? So it would literally alter the relationship and view back from the business owner to the bookkeeping business owner. And it can be done very efficiently and probably more likely to be valuable if it was efficiently. So the lift in a bookkeeper's time, in terms of time to value and time to impact in their business, this is a huge opportunity.
You're exactly right. And I love your phrase, the value moment, because you want to create maximum number of value moments in that interaction. You also use the phrase, lean in. And it's great because it's a body language phrase. And people will literally lean in towards you because you will have created rapport, connection, the feeling of simpatico. And when people feel that they like you, they're more open to being influenced by you. And of course, the opposite is true. So the connection you make with people sets the stage for more value moments. And if you think of yourself as a professional communicator, you're going to have more of those value moments and better relationships. If you remember that you're in the relationship business first and the bookkeeping business second, you're going to have more of those value moments. And here's another really practical, simple understanding that can make a huge difference. Prior to meeting with a client, prior to presenting the bookkeeping information, prior to an actual formal presentation of any kind, consider these three simple points. What essentially do I want the person to know? What do I want them to know? What do I want them to feel? And what do I want them to do? So when it comes to what you want people to know, the motto is KISS. Keep it simple, speaker. Simplify your message to the essentials of what it is that people may actually remember. What do you want them to feel? This is a missing link in a lot of business communication. We know, however, that people buy on emotion and they justify with fact. So if you consciously consider, how do you want your clients to feel as a result of your interaction? You want them to feel trust, probably the most important thing for them to feel in a relationship with a bookkeeper. You want them to feel that the situation is under control. You want them to feel confident, for example. And when you clarify for yourself how you want your client to feel, you project those emotions more clearly. And we know that emotions are contagious, for better or for worse. So you have to be careful what you catch and you spread. But by consciously intending the feelings you want to communicate, you can generate more positive feelings. And then what do you want people to do? Well, being really specific about the actions you want them to take. And by doing what's in the best interest of your client, there's always, when we're in business for ourselves, there's always something we want people to do, and that is to extend our contract, re-engage us, give us the rest of their business, and so on. But we get to that ultimate goal for ourselves by specifically, what does this client need to do in order to get their books in better shape, in order to get their business in better shape? So what do you want them to know? How do you want them to feel? What do you want them to do as a result of your communication or presentation? That's pretty simple. And yet people just don't bother with it because they don't think of themselves as professional communicators. They become big molecule fondlers, and they think they're in the bookkeeping or the biochemistry business instead of in the relationship business.
Remarkable. What a value. I was going to say bomb, but I'm trying to think of something a little bit more nice. It's like a chocolate croissant. You got this beautiful croissant, and then all of a sudden you're digging into some delicious dark chocolate. I love it, and so clear. And I can only say, like, if everyone listening right now were to just take that on, the impact on their business would be transformational, point blank.
And yes, and thank you. And that was a chocolate stuffed croissant, but I've got a whole bakery for you.
I was just going to ask. I'm guessing the Mastering the Art of Public Speaking has a bakery that we want to go in and sink our teeth into. Tell us a little bit about that book.
Sure. Well, the insights we've been discussing are all drawn just from the first, we're just talking about the first chapter of this book. We've touched on some of the content in the first chapter and a little bit in the second chapter, but there are 8 chapters and they go in depth and they're lots of fun and engaging. And it's more, as you can tell, this is more than just mastering the art of public speaking, because part of my thesis is that as you deepen, enrich, expand your communication, presentation, persuasion skills, as you get people engaged with your message, as you learn to make what it is you want to communicate more memorable to other people, it elevates your whole life. It strengthens your sense of who you are. So it invites you to this journey of fulfillment and full self-expression. Most people are happiest when they get to express their unique individuality in a way that feels really, really good to them. And different people do that in different ways. So I don't try to train other people to present in my style. Instead, I help people find what's your natural style, what's your natural, true voice. And it's just one of the greatest joys in life to watch people discover that and enjoy it. So mastering the art of public speaking is just an absolute cookbook for the ultimate bakery of this journey of deepening and enriching your relationships. I wrote a previous book called The Art of Connection, which focuses more on the sort of one-to-one relationship side of things, whereas the art of public speaking, mastering the art of public speaking, focuses more on the notion that you might be talking to 1 or 2 or 1,000 people. But really, it's really volume 1 and volume 2 of a magnum opus on the art of communication and presentation. And they're both published by New World Library, a wonderful publisher. So The Art of Connection came out in 2017, and Mastering the Art of Public Speaking is coming out now.
Oh, this is fantastic. Well, we here at the Successful Bookkeeper community, we talk about helping bookkeepers build a business they love. And so I think if I am not stepping over the line here, I'd like to propose an alternative title just for our community members is Everything I Needed to Learn About Building a Business I Love, I Learned by Reading Mastering the Art of Public Speaking by Michael Gelb.
Yay!
And I'm really, just thoroughly impressed with your ability to communicate and bring simplicity to the message, but as well I'm inspired for our listener right now in terms of what's available for them by taking these things. You've put them in the concepts into really digestible, actionable bits that I know for sure I can just feel already our listener taking this information and being able to literally action it without probably even writing something down. They could literally do this if they were on the way right now to a meeting, which not likely in the current situation, but let's say they're about to get on a call with one of their clients. I think they could take this information right now and apply it. So well done. And also, I just encourage people to get these books. I know I'm going to be ordering both of those books for myself. And Michael, I really just am so appreciative on behalf of our listeners. Thank you for your generosity in sharing this with us today.
It's my absolute pleasure to do so. People can go to michaelgelb.com. That's Gelb, michaelgelb.com. That's my main website. And if they go to the resources page, there's actually 17 books. So don't get confused. Go down. I think it's the third one on as you scroll down is Mastering the Art of Public Speaking. You start with that one, and then you can bookkeeper. First, you have to be a book buyer, and then you can keep these books close to your heart and soul.
Exactly. And unless they've just bought a new bookshelf and they want to fill it up, you could go all in with the 17. But let's start with the first one, The Art of Public Speaking, and we'll put a link right to that book in the show.
Great.
And as well, I'll add the communication book as well. And Michael,
Super.
I know your time is valuable and the work you do all over the world is valuable. And so thank you for doing that. And thank you for coming and generously giving us your thoughts and experience and learnings. It's very valuable. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you. Thank you.
And with that, we wrap another episode of the Successful Bookkeeper podcast. To learn more about today's wonderful and generous guest and to get access to all sorts of valuable free business building resources, you can go to thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Until next time, goodbye.
You've been listening to The Successful Bookkeeper with Michael Palmer. For more information and to download the resources mentioned in this episode, please visit us at thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Thank you for listening.